I recently partnered with Lift here in Toronto, and Lift is the liaison of independent filmmakers of Toronto. They supplied me with some 3378 film to shoot for this video, and stick around to the end because I'm going to be giving away some of that film as well as some general memberships to Lift, which offers an amazing educational film resource for both analog filmmaking and digital filmmaking. But first, let's talk about 3378. THX 1138 is a 1971 American social science fiction film directed by George Lucas. Kodak 3378 is a film that's not even meant to go through a camera. But when it does, and if you find that sweet spot, it can give some very striking and unique results. 3378 is a 16mm black and white film from Kodak that's different from the quality offerings of Tri-X and XX that you can get in that format. It's a sound recording film, but that doesn't actually mean that it allows you to record audio when you're capturing your image, because its real use is a little bit more technical than that. On a 16mm film print that would go through a projector, a soundtrack can be added down the side of the film. This might be a magnetic soundtrack where the audio is recorded onto magnetic tape that's stripped down one side of the film, or you might have an optical soundtrack. Optical soundtracks look like an actual audio waveform on the film, and it's projected onto a sound head in a projector to create the soundtrack for your picture. During post-production, the sound that you're working with is taken from its original source and is then exposed onto high contrast print stock. 3378 for 16mm or 2378 for 35mm. So this film is intended for creating optical soundtracks in a post-production process, but it is capable of capturing a very high contrast black and white image if you put it through a camera. 3378 is also orthochromatic because it's black and white print stock, which means that you can handle it safely under a red light in a dark room. Because 3378 isn't meant for use in a camera, as I mentioned, it can take a bit of trial and error to get the image that you want. It's recommended as a 12 ISO film, so lots of light is great, but of course the higher the contrast of the scene that you're shooting, the more intense things are going to be with this stock. It can also be developed as a black and white negative or a black and white reversal film stock depending on what you ask the lab to do with it. I got a 100-foot roll of Kodak 3378 from Lift for use in my own non-reflex Bolex. This Bolex model has a 144-degree shutter opening, which is about 1/60th of a second. With the help of my friend Jackie, we experimented with capturing some different movement and texture on this high-contrast film. We also did a few of these shots along with the help of dancers Sean Brack and Amanda Pye. So big shout out to them because it was a lot of fun to work with them. This stuff is definitely not the most forgiving. Crazy blown out highlights and a few regions that are solid black can happen really easily with this stock, and it's usually really harsh. It gives me this sort of barren and isolated feeling on some of the shots, like Jackie on the train tracks here. It's just straight up black or white. So really different from a range of grays and midtones that you're gonna get when you're working with a regular camera stock like XX. On my Bolex, I have a 75mm, a 25mm, and a 16mm lens. Much of this stuff was exposed around f4, 5.6, and 8.
See, it's a good one. The ding, I mean.
Yeah, because you're gonna lift it up, right?
Yep. We are holding a bike.
I'm working with film here. Just wind it.
All right.
We shot again on a more overcast day in the same settings, and have a bit more detail here, especially when I compare the walking and the dancing on the train tracks. The shadows are going to be really deep with this, and my highlights have this sort of glowing look to them that makes everything super vivid. I like this film a lot, even though it's not always ideal to work with, and I think the harshness you can get with it makes shooting people and textures especially really interesting. Think about this film maybe if you're doing like an end of the world story or something related to isolation even. Jackie on the bench here with no one around and everything falling off into hard white areas is probably my favorite shot that I got on the recent roll. At the risk of sounding too pretentious, it makes me want to do something like La Jetée, the French short film that inspired 12 Monkeys, but maybe do it instead with a high contrast film like this. It also has this unusual smoothness to it for the image because the grain is so fine, and that can even be like a little uncomfortable to look at depending on what you're shooting. It's a unique look, but I know a lot of people are drawn to it, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with for sure. I have a few older rolls of 3378 that I've shot from 4 or 5 years ago now that I like a lot as well. Unfortunately, I lost my scans of these in a hard drive crash and haven't had them rescanned, so I kind of quickly captured this stuff from a projector. The glowing highlights and the deep shadows are really what I do love about this stock. This shot was done on the Bolex using a wide-angle 5.7mm canoptic lens that I used to have. On this stock, it gives such an eerie look when combined with this subject in a big white space. I also have this slow motion shot of someone throwing a baseball, and this was done on the Bolex at 64 frames per second. All of this 3378 has been processed as a negative by Niagara Custom Lab here in Toronto. I have seen others recommend treating it as a 24 ISO film though when shooting it as a negative, and that can rein in your bright areas a bit more. I've definitely seen other examples that aren't quite as intense as some of the stuff I've captured here. Overall, it's going to be an interesting and even unexpected look at times when using this film. Using all the footage that we shot, Jackie has edited everything into a finished movement piece. 3378 is also usually pretty cheap when you find places that are selling it. Kodak only sells it in large 1200-foot rolls, which I do not recommend buying even though it's relatively cheap as well, unless you have a fully equipped darkroom in order to handle a roll that big. Places such as Lift and Mono Nowhere in the States, though, are able to take those 1200-foot rolls and roll them down into much more friendly 100-foot spools for a camera such as a Bolex. If you're interested in home developing using things like a Lomo or a Morse tank for 16mm, then the cost of the 3378 stuff can also be pretty appealing. And especially if you're into alternative processing techniques such as bucket processing. Bucket processing, of course, is when you take a big bucket in the dark, fill it with your chemical, and then just shove all your film in and develop it that way. It's wild and inconsistent, and you can get really creative with it. It's usually all scratched up and very strange looking and very far away from like the clean look of professional processing or the ultra clean look of digital filmmaking. So it's just one of those things that allows you to create something really, really unique because you're using motion picture film. And because 3378 is a bit of an odd stock, it becomes so much more interesting to experiment with if you're going to go down that route, because you can also use a red safe light when you're bucket processing because it's orthochromatic. And speaking of experimental artist filmmaking, let me tell you about Lift. Lift is one of the greatest film resources in Canada, if not probably like even outside of Canada, because of the things that they have access to. And I've been incredibly lucky to get to know some of the staff a bit more and have a chance to work with them in some way, especially because I have a lot of things in mind that I would really like to have access to Lift things to help me out with. They're an artist-run charitable organization that offers rentals, classes, and facilities for both analog and digital filmmaking. Lift has different membership tiers, the general, production, organizational, as well as the student memberships, which grant people access to discounts on workshops and the Lift store, as well as giving local members the ability to rent equipment and facilities. They offer workshops in person throughout the year, but they also offer certain workshops online. And registration for the summer 2022 workshop season opens on May 24th. They also offer a variety of special programs including residences, bursaries, artist awards, mentorships, and an annual filmmaker support grant, all of which are designed to support artists at varying stages of their creative journeys. For this video, Lift has supplied me with 3 prize packs to give away at random. The prize pack includes a 100-foot roll of Kodak 3378 16mm film, a t-shirt or a tote bag, and a general membership for Lift. This is available worldwide, and all you have to do is enter through the link in the description of this video. The Lift membership allows people an access to a Lift store discount, and they will ship worldwide on your orders through that, as well as the ability to enroll in any of the online courses. So definitely check it out. The giveaway is going from now until Monday, May 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and the 3 winners will be announced at the beginning of the video that goes up on Thursday the 19th, and on my Instagram and Twitter at that time as well. And especially if you live in Toronto or the surrounding area, then check out Lift because they're an incredible resource. They have some of the only publicly accessible analog equipment in the world at this point, including a JK optical printer, Oxberry animation cameras and setups, and even a brand new 16mm and 35mm Steenbeck flatbed editor. And I have gotten a chance to take a look at that thing, and it is incredible. I never thought I'd see one that looks that new. So check links in the description below for all of that stuff. Enter the giveaway, even if it's only for that 16mm roll of film, so you have something to play around with as we go into the summer. You can also find links for supporting the channel through my Patreon, as well as some of the merch that I have available that helps to just support the channel and allows me to keep doing all this stuff. So as always, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you to Alexander Savin, Anthony Tantillo, Babak Motamedi, Benjamin MacArthur, Brian DeMartin, Carly Baker, Carson Fuller, Chowian Chris, Chaz Alling, Celluloid Alchemist, Chris Baltiera, Colin Larkin, Colin Jackson, Civilis, Dan Silvestri, David Kelsey, Derek Konigsberg, Django Skarupa, Elizabeth Visalia, Georgie Nass, Ian Farber, Ian Frank, Jack, Jeff Yoakum, Jeremy Lee Camp, John Brock, Kevin Heinzelman, Larry O, Mark Lentz, Matt Curon, Olivia, Orlando Perez, Paul Snow, Scott Vansel, Sparkle Off, Steve Miller, Taylor Brown, Thomas Wibley, and Tony Graham for all the amazing support over on the Patreon, and an extra special shout out to Babak Motamedi, Carson Fuller, Larry O, Taylor Brown, and Tony Graham for going above and beyond with the support from the Patreon.